Unaware her husband was secretly buying the company she worked for, she divorced him to marry her manager. What he did next left everyone stunned. He didn't argue. He didn't cry. He just placed his wedding ring on the table beside her coffee cup, folded a letter he never gave her, and walked out. That morning, Laura Bennett watched the man she had called too small for her dreams close the front door quietly, leaving behind 6 years of marriage and a silence that hummed like a heartbeat. From the outside, they looked perfect, polished, smiling, envied. Inside, their love had thinned until it sounded like background noise. Laura told herself she wanted more. More excitement. More luxury. More ambition. Ryan told himself she was right. But while she chased admiration, he was quietly building something far beyond what she could imagine. She thought he lacked drive. He thought she lacked patience. They were both wrong. While Laura stayed late at the office, working with Derek Collins, her charming new manager, Ryan stayed late at his firm, building a silent empire in her name. He wasn't chasing a promotion. He was closing a deal. One that would make him the majority owner of Haven Tech Solutions, the very company where Laura worked. He created a trust called LB Holdings. The initials stood for Laura Bennett. Every signature, every sleepless night, every dollar invested was meant for her. He planned to tell her on their anniversary, to hand her the papers, her name beside his, and say, "You always wanted more. Now it's yours." But before that day came, Laura served him divorce papers. She said the words with calm precision, the kind you practice in the mirror when you've already decided. "You're a good man, Ryan. But we want different things." He didn't plead. He didn't ask if it was Derek. He just looked at her, nodded once, and walked away. That was the last morning they shared a house. That was the first day her story began to crumble. 6 months later, the photos online looked beautiful. Laura and Derek, the power couple. Matching watches. Candlelight dinners. He told her she was finally living the life she deserved. She smiled for every picture, not knowing every post was time-stamped with irony. Because while she was posing for the world, Ryan was signing documents that would quietly shift everything she thought she owned. He never spoke her name, never boasted. He just worked. Patiently. Silently. Then one Friday morning, a company-wide email went out. "We are pleased to welcome new ownership under Bennett Capital Holdings." Laura laughed when she read it. "Bennett," she said, half joking. "What are the odds?" That same afternoon, the conference room filled. Derek at the head of the table. Laura by his side. Everyone buzzing, waiting for the new owner to arrive. The door opened. He walked in. Ryan Bennett. Calm. Composed. The man she once called unambitious. He didn't speak right away. He just looked around the room, his gaze steady, his silence louder than any anger. Finally, he said, "Good morning. I'm Ryan Bennett, founder of Bennett Capital Holdings, the new majority owner of Haven Tech Solutions." The room froze. Derek's smile faltered. Laura's heart stopped. He wasn't her husband anymore. He was her boss. And he didn't even look at her. The meeting ended in silence. The next weeks blurred into whispers and audits. Derek's confidence cracked. His decisions questioned. Rumors spread. An internal review uncovered the unthinkable, unauthorized expenses, corporate cards funding luxury trips, dinners that weren't business at all. Ryan didn't expose him. He didn't need to. He just let truth do what revenge never could. Derek was fired for misconduct. Laura was asked to resign in connection. Within a month, the same hands that once signed vacation forms were signing resignation letters. Her dream life collapsed quietly, piece by piece. The condo. The status. The invitations. All gone. And then, one morning, a letter arrived. No return address. Just her name in neat handwriting. She opened it slowly, her pulse trembling. "Laura. I was saving to buy Haven Tech for us. LB stood for Laura Bennett. You would have owned half. I built it for you, not for me. I wish you peace, even if I couldn't give you happiness. Ryan." The paper slipped from her hand. Her world went still. She realized too late that the man she thought was holding her back had been building her future. And the man she left everything for had built his success on lies. That night, Laura sat by the window, staring at the skyline, the one she had mocked him for dreaming about. The city lights blurred through tears she didn't try to hide. For the first time, she whispered the truth aloud. I was wrong. Across the city, in a quiet office overlooking the same skyline, Ryan watched the lights flicker. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just looked out and said softly, sometimes, the quietest man writes the loudest ending. The world didn't end all at once. It fell apart in quiet pieces. After Ryan's return as the new owner of Haven Tech, whispers replaced the applause that once followed Laura and Derek. The same people who toasted their engagement now lowered their voices when they entered the break room. Emails stopped arriving. Meetings were rescheduled. Faces turned polite, then distant. The power couple had become a company rumor. Laura sat in her office, staring at her reflection in the dark screen of her laptop. She used to love this view, the skyline glittering beyond the glass, a symbol of everything she thought she wanted. Now it felt like a cage. Outside, Ryan moved through the halls like a ghost of memory, polite, professional, untouchable. He never raised his voice, never humiliated her. His silence was sharper than any insult. Each time she heard his footsteps, her breath caught. Each time he walked past without looking at her, her heart broke a little more. Derek didn't take the shift well. He began drinking during lunch breaks, arriving late, temper short. His charm cracked in front of everyone. When Ryan quietly placed a file on his desk, a folder filled with flagged transactions and missing invoices, Derek's face went pale. You can either resign quietly, Ryan said softly, or the board can read this. Derek's arrogance dissolved. By the next morning, his desk was empty. Laura didn't show up that day. She couldn't. She sat at home surrounded by boxes of designer clothes and unopened gifts, the remnants of a life she'd built on borrowed dreams. Her phone buzzed with messages from Derek, apologies typed between desperation and denial. She didn't reply. The world outside moved on. The company she once ruled by charm now thrived under Ryan's quiet discipline. Numbers rose. Staff returned to smiles. The building no longer echoed with gossip, but with progress. And still, Laura watched from the outside. One evening, she saw Ryan on television, a brief interview for a tech magazine. He spoke about growth, integrity, and innovation. He never mentioned her. But when the reporter asked about motivation, he paused just long enough for the audience to feel there was a story behind his calm. Sometimes, he said, you build something for love. And when that love is gone, you build for peace instead. The comment went viral. Viewers called it poetic. Laura called it unbearable. She shut the TV off and sat in the dark, replaying every decision, every word she'd thrown like a stone. She had wanted a man who could match her ambition. Now she saw that ambition was never the problem. Patience was. Weeks passed. Silence grew heavier. Then came the letter, a formal notice from the company's HR department. Termination due to ethical conflicts and undisclosed relationship with former superior. Her throat tightened. No warning. No appeal. Her name, once golden, now blacklisted. That night, she packed a suitcase. The same suitcase Ryan once carried when he left her. As she zipped it closed, a photo slipped from between old files, the two of them at their first apartment. The walls were cracked, the couch secondhand, but the smiles were real. She stared at it for a long time before tucking it into her bag. Outside, rain began to fall. Inside, she whispered the same words she once mocked him with. We'll be fine. But even she didn't believe it. Across the city, Ryan stood by his office window, watching the storm streak the glass. His reflection was steady, but his eyes were tired. Beneath every success, there was still loss, not of business, but of something far more personal. He had everything he once dreamed of. And yet, the silence still hurt. Tomorrow, Laura would vanish from Haven Tech. But her absence would leave behind a shadow. One that would follow Ryan long after the applause faded. Because sometimes, the hardest part of winning is realizing it doesn't feel like victory at all. The headlines died down, but the echoes stayed. Weeks passed, yet Laura's name still floated through boardrooms and comment sections like a ghost that refused to rest. Bennett's ex-wife, they whispered, the one who threw it all away. Ryan never replied to gossip. He didn't have to. His silence became its own kind of legend. But at night, when the offices were empty and the hum of computers faded, even he felt the quiet stretching too wide. He had built his revenge perfectly, without shouting, without cruelty, without a single public word. But now that it was done, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like standing on a mountain alone, holding something cold. One evening, a knock echoed against his office door. It was the security guard, a kind old man named Harold. He looked uneasy. "Sir," he said softly, "there's someone downstairs asking for you." Ryan hesitated. "Who?" The guard sighed. "She says her name is Laura Bennett." For a long moment, Ryan didn't move. Part of him wanted to turn away, to pretend he hadn't heard. But he didn't. He went down. Laura was standing in the lobby, drenched from the rain, clutching a folder to her chest. Her eyes were red, her hair undone, a far cry from the woman who once sparkled under city lights. When she saw him, she didn't speak right away. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Finally, she said, "I needed to see you." He didn't answer. He just waited. She opened the folder and placed a small envelope on the counter. "These are my shares," she whispered. "The ones I kept. I don't deserve them." He looked at the papers but didn't reach for them. "Why are you giving me this?" Her voice cracked. "Because I can't keep anything built on a lie. I hurt you. I left you when you were building something for me. I told myself you were weak, and I was wrong." Rain pounded the glass behind them. For the first time in months, he really looked at her. The pride was gone. The mask was gone. She wasn't the villain anymore, just someone broken by her own choices. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, I owe you everything. You built an empire, Ryan. You did it right. And I destroyed everything that mattered for something that never even existed." He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say that could change the past. After a long silence, she stepped back. "I'm leaving the city," she said. "I just wanted to say goodbye." And then she turned to go. He let her walk to the door. Then, as she reached for the handle, he spoke, barely above a whisper. "Laura." She froze. He didn't move closer. He didn't smile. "I built the company," he said, "but I never built it to win. I built it to prove that love doesn't have to be loud to be real. You taught me that." She turned slowly, eyes glistening. "Do you forgive me?" He looked at her, really looked, and then nodded once. "Yes," he said. "I already did." Her shoulders shook. She didn't say another word. She walked out into the rain and disappeared into the blur of headlights and night. Ryan stood there for a long time, staring at the empty door. The letter she had returned sat on the counter, wet with raindrops. He picked it up, but instead of keeping it, he tore it gently in half and threw it away. Some stories don't need new endings, only closure. That night, he went back to his office, opened the safe where her initials were still engraved on the original trust papers, and added one last note beneath them. LB. The lesson, not the loss. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside, a man who had lost everything finally felt peace. Because sometimes, true revenge isn't about making someone hurt. It's about watching them find their own way back to humility and letting go before pride pulls you down with them. The days after Laura's visit passed like a slow thaw after a long winter. The tension that had lived in Ryan's chest for years began to ease, replaced not by joy, but by something gentler, acceptance. He stopped checking headlines. He stopped measuring his worth in deals and digits. He began arriving home earlier, cooking again, watering the plants Laura once teased him for keeping alive. For the first time in a long time, silence didn't sound like punishment. But one night, while cleaning out his desk drawer, he found something he hadn't seen since before the divorce, a worn brown envelope, sealed but unmailed. His name was written in neat cursive across the front, Laura Bennett. He sat back in his chair, turning it over in his hands. The paper had yellowed at the edges, but the words inside waited untouched. It was the letter he had written 2 years ago, the one he had planned to give her on their anniversary, the night he was going to reveal everything. He opened it slowly. The ink had faded slightly, but the words still breathed with warmth and hope. Laura, by the time you read this, I'll have finished something I've been building for years, not just for me, but for us. It's called Haven Tech. You might laugh, but I built it with your initials hidden in its foundation. Every file, every contract, every late night I stayed up coding, I kept your name close. LB Holdings. Laura Bennett. You always said I wasn't ambitious enough. Maybe you were right. I never wanted the world. I just wanted to build something that could keep us safe inside it. You told me love couldn't pay the bills. Maybe not. But I believe love can build the house we live in. When I give you this letter, I'll hand you a folder. Inside it, your name will be next to mine as co-owner. Because what's the point of success if the person you built it for isn't standing beside you? If you're reading this now, it means something went wrong. Maybe I failed to show you what I was building. Maybe you stopped believing before I could prove it. Either way, know this, I never built any of it out of pride. I built it because I saw you as my future. Ryan. He folded the letter gently, his throat tightening. In another life, maybe he had given it to her on time. Maybe they would have built something together instead of against each other. But this was the life that had happened, the one where silence had spoken louder than words. He reached for his pen and began to write on the back of the old page. I never sent this because I thought success would speak for me. But I learned too late that success without love is just noise. Wherever you are, I hope you find peace. You once said I lived too small. Maybe now you know, I just wanted a life that fit 2 people, not 1. He set the letter down and stared at it, the ink still glistening faintly in the lamplight. Then he folded it once more, sealed it back in the envelope, and wrote a new line across the front. To be opened when peace feels possible. He didn't know if she'd ever find it. Maybe it would stay tucked away forever in a drawer, like so many of their shared dreams. But in that quiet moment, he finally understood that closure doesn't always arrive with confrontation. Sometimes it comes through forgiveness written in past tense. Ryan leaned back in his chair, looking out at the city lights. The skyline shimmered, the same one he once promised her they'd share. Now, it no longer looked like ambition. It looked like calm. The man who once built for love and lost for pride had finally built something stronger, peace. And for the first time, he didn't need to send the letter to be heard. The morning air carried a soft chill as Ryan walked through the quiet streets of downtown Austin. The world had changed around him, new cafes, new skyscrapers, new faces rushing by. But for him, time had slowed. The days no longer ran on ambition, they moved on quiet purpose. He had begun teaching part-time at a local university, finance for entrepreneurs. Most of his students didn't know who he used to be. They only saw a calm man who taught them how to build wisely, not quickly. They didn't know the cost of that wisdom. One afternoon, after class, a student approached him. "Professor Bennett," she said, "you should come to the new Haven Tech Foundation event next week. It's about second chances for women in business. The director's story is powerful." He smiled politely. "Maybe I will." He didn't think much of it at first. But when he saw the flyer the student left behind, Haven Tech Foundation, empowering women to rise again, his breath caught. Beneath the title was a name he hadn't seen in years. Director, Laura Bennett. For a long moment, he just stared. The letters blurred, not from disbelief, but something deeper, the kind of ache that comes when a past you thought buried starts breathing again. The night of the event, the ballroom glowed with soft amber light. Music drifted, glasses clinked, voices hummed. Ryan stood in the back, unnoticed, a quiet figure among polished faces. At the front of the room, Laura stepped onto the stage. She looked different, older, softer, but stronger in a way he'd never seen before. Gone was the woman chasing approval. What stood before him now was someone rebuilt from the ashes of her own mistakes. 2 years ago, she began, her voice steady but warm, I lost everything I thought mattered, status, reputation, love. I believed that success was about climbing higher than others. But sometimes, she paused, her gaze drifting across the crowd, you have to fall to learn how to stand for real. The room fell silent. Every word carried the weight of truth. I built this foundation, she continued, because second chances don't erase our past, they rewrite our purpose. And I want every woman who's ever been told she's too late, too broken, or too small to know, she's not. The crowd erupted in applause. But Ryan didn't clap. He just stood there, heart still, watching her smile through the same quiet grace he'd once taken for granted. After the event, she was surrounded by people, journalists, donors, volunteers. But as the night thinned out, their eyes met across the room. For a second, the noise faded. They hadn't spoken in years, yet the silence between them said everything. She walked toward him slowly, hesitant but composed. Ryan, she said softly. He nodded. Laura. They both smiled, faint, uncertain, but real. I didn't know you were coming, she said. I didn't know you'd be here to come to, he replied. A small laugh escaped her, genuine and fragile. Life has a strange way of circling back, doesn't it? He looked at her, not the way a man looks at the woman he lost, but the way someone looks at a reflection of who they used to be. It does, he said quietly. You look happy. I am, she said, then paused. And you? He thought for a moment. Peaceful. They stood there, years of pain and silence stretching between them like an invisible bridge finally rebuilt. Laura reached into her purse and handed him a small card, embossed, simple. Haven Tech Foundation. Empowering the future. I'd like you to speak next month, she said. About building with integrity. About starting over. He looked down at the card, then back at her. You're sure you want me to? Her eyes softened. I'm sure you should. For a moment, the world stood still, not as lovers, not as enemies, but as two souls who had finally found the closure their story needed. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? She asked. For falling, he answered. Because that's how I learned to rise. A tear shimmered in her eyes, but she smiled. We both did, Ryan. As she turned to leave, he watched her go, not with regret this time, but with gratitude. Some endings, he realized, aren't endings at all. They're echoes that lead you home. And in that quiet moment, for the first time since the day she left, Ryan Bennett whispered a truth that finally felt real. We weren't meant to last. We were meant to learn. Outside, the night glowed with soft city light. Two paths had diverged long ago and somehow, both had led them back to peace. What are your thoughts on this? Please leave your comments, subscribe and share this story.